Hey, I'm really glad you're here. After you listen to this story, please share your thoughts in the comments. Hearing what you think truly means a lot to me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and when I glanced at the screen, there was an email from some real estate lawyer I'd never heard of, congratulating me on the sale of the cabin. The cabin. The one Dad left to me and my brother Ethan when he passed last year. My stomach dropped like I'd just missed a step on a staircase. I hadn't signed anything, hadn't agreed to anything. Ethan was the only other person with a claim to it, and he'd been dodging my calls for weeks. I sat there, staring at the email, my coffee going cold, feeling like the ground was crumbling under me. How could he do this? I called Ethan again, my hands shaking as I dialed. Voicemail, of course. Ethan, what the hell? Did you sell the cabin? Call me back. Now! I hung up, my voice echoing in my empty apartment. The cabin wasn't just some random property. It was where we spent every summer as kids, where Dad taught us to fish, where we buried Mom's ashes under the big oak tree after she died. It was the last piece of them we had. Ethan knew that. He was there, crying with me when we scattered those ashes. So why would he go behind my back like this? I'm Jake, by the way. 32, single, working a dead-end IT job that pays just enough to keep my head above water. Ethan's 2 years older, always been the responsible one. Married, 2 kids, a mortgage, the whole suburban dream. But he's also always been the one to take charge, to make decisions without asking. Like when we were kids, and he'd decide we were biking to the creek instead of the arcade because he thought it was better for us. I'd go along with it, mostly because fighting him was like arguing with a brick wall. But this was different. This was betrayal. I pulled up the email again, scanning for details. The sale closed 2 days ago. The buyer was some developer turning the land into condos. Condos. Our cabin, with its creaky porch and the carvings we made in the doorframe, was going to be bulldozed for a soulless complex. The email mentioned a check being mailed to me. Half the sale price minus fees. I didn't care about the money. Okay, that's a lie. I could have used it. My car's on its last legs, and I've got student loans breathing down my neck. But that cabin was worth more than any check. Ethan had to know that. I grabbed my keys and drove to his place, an hour across town. My mind was racing the whole way, replaying every conversation we'd had about the cabin since Dad died. We'd agreed to keep it, hadn't we? Sure, we'd talked about how it needed repairs. Leaky roof, busted plumbing, but we were going to figure it out together. At least, that's what I thought. When I got to Ethan's house, his car was in the driveway, but the lights were off. I banged on the door anyway, loud enough to wake the neighbors. Nothing. I texted him. I'm at your house. Where are you? We need to talk about the cabin. No response. I sat on his front steps, the cold seeping through my jeans, and tried to piece it together. Ethan had been weird lately. Distant, short-tempered. Last time we talked, he mentioned money being tight, how his wife, Sarah, was stressed about daycare costs. Was that it? Did he need the cash so bad he'd sell our memories without even asking me? I felt like I didn't know him anymore. The brother who'd carried me home when I broke my ankle at 10, who'd stayed up all night with me when Mom died, who promised we'd always have each other's backs. Where was he? I sat on Ethan's steps for over an hour, my breath fogging in the chilly night air, until headlights finally swept across the lawn. His SUV pulled into the driveway, and I stood up, my legs stiff, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and dread. Ethan stepped out, looking exhausted, his tie loosened and his hair a mess. He froze when he saw me, his eyes widening for a split second before his face hardened into that stubborn look I knew too well. "Jake," he said, like he was surprised but not really. "What are you doing here?" "You know exactly why I'm here," I snapped, holding up my phone like it was evidence in a courtroom. "The cabin, Ethan. You sold it? Without even talking to me?" My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded, but I couldn't help it. This wasn't just about the cabin. It was about us, about trust, about everything we'd promised to hold on to after Dad was gone. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, and glanced at the house. The living room light flicked on, and I saw Sarah's silhouette in the window, probably wondering why we were arguing in the driveway at 9 p.m. "Can we not do this out here?" he muttered, brushing past me to unlock the door. I followed him inside, the warmth of the house hitting me like a wall. It smelled like dinner, something with garlic, and I could hear his kids giggling upstairs. For a second, I felt like an intruder in his perfect little life. We ended up in the kitchen, him leaning against the counter, me pacing like a caged animal. "Explain," I said, crossing my arms, "because I'm really trying to understand how you could do this." He didn't look at me at first, just stared at the floor, his jaw tight. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," he finally said, his voice low. "I didn't want to cut you out, Jake, but you don't get it. You don't have kids, a mortgage, a wife who's up at night crying because we're drowning in bills. The cabin was just sitting there, rotting. It was a money pit. A money pit? I laughed, but it came out bitter, sharp. That's what you call the place where we spread Mom's ashes? Where Dad taught us how to tie a goddamn fishing knot? You didn't even ask me, Ethan. You forged my signature or something, didn't you? He flinched at that, and I knew I'd hit the mark. I didn't forge anything, he said quickly, but his eyes darted away. The lawyer, he handled it, said he could work around you being hard to reach. I tried calling you, Jake. You're always so busy, always dodging me. Dodging you? I stepped closer, my voice rising. You're the one who stopped answering my calls. Last time we talked, you said we'd fix the cabin up together. You promised. My throat tightened, and I hated how much this hurt, how it felt like losing Mom and Dad all over again. You had no right. Ethan's face reddened, and he finally looked at me, his eyes blazing. You think I wanted to do this? You think I enjoyed it? I did it for my family, Jake. For Sarah, for the kids. You're out there living your single life. No responsibilities, no one depending on you. I don't have that luxury. The cabin money? It's keeping us afloat. Daycare? The car payments? The hospital bills from when Lily was sick last year? You wouldn't understand. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong, that I understood plenty. My life wasn't some carefree bachelor fantasy. He knew about my loans, my shitty job, the way I'd been scraping by. But his words stung because part of me wondered if he was right. Maybe I didn't get it. Not the way he did. Still, that didn't excuse what he'd done. You could have talked to me, I said. Quieter now, the fight draining out of me. We could have figured something out. Together. He shook his head, like I was missing the point. There was no time. The developer's offer was now or never. I made a call. I'm sorry, okay? But it's done. It's not done, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. Not for me. I left Ethan's house that night with a knot in my chest, his words echoing in my head. It's done. Like hell it was. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring through the windshield as I tried to make sense of what had happened. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was past midnight, but I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, digging through the email from the lawyer. The sale was final, the paperwork filed, but something felt off. The lawyer's name, Richard Grayson, sounded vaguely familiar, and the developer's company, Horizon Properties, rang a bell too. I started Googling, my fingers flying across the keyboard, chasing a hunch I couldn't quite name. Horizon Properties had a reputation. Shady deals, cutting corners, buying up family homes and small properties to flip them into overpriced condos. There were forum posts and local news articles about their aggressive tactics, lowball offers, pressure to sign fast, even rumors of forged documents. My blood ran cold. Ethan said the lawyer handled my absence. But how? I hadn't signed anything, and Dad's will was clear. The cabin belonged to both of us, equal shares. I pulled up the will, which I'd scanned months ago, and read it again. No loopholes, no fine print giving Ethan full control. He'd done this behind my back, but I was starting to think it wasn't just him. I called the lawyer's office first thing the next morning, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. The receptionist was polite but useless, saying Mr. Grayson was in meetings and would call me back. Yeah, right. I left a message anyway, demanding to see the sale documents. Then I texted Ethan, I'm looking into the sale. If you're hiding something, you better tell me now. No reply. Big surprise. By noon, I was so wound up I couldn't focus at work. So I took a half day and drove to the county records office. If Ethan wasn't going to talk, I'd find answers myself. The records office was a maze of fluorescent lights and bored clerks. After an hour of waiting, I got copies of the sale documents. My name was on them, sure enough, but the signature wasn't mine. It was close. Same loopy J, same messy scrawl, but I could tell. I've been signing my name the same way since high school, and this wasn't it. I felt sick, my hands trembling as I clutched the papers. Ethan hadn't just sold the cabin. He'd let someone forge my signature. Or worse, he'd done it himself. I drove straight to Ethan's house again, the documents burning a hole in my passenger seat. This time, Sarah answered the door, her face tight with worry. Jake, what's going on? Ethan said you two had a fight. She looked exhausted, her hair in a messy bun, a toddler clinging to her leg. I felt a pang of guilt. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle, but I was too angry to back down. Where's Ethan? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He's at work, she said, her eyes narrowing. What's this about? The cabin? I held up the papers. He sold it, Sarah, without my consent. My signature's on here, but I didn't sign anything. Her face went pale, and she stepped back, letting me in. The kids were watching cartoons in the living room, oblivious to the storm brewing. Sarah led me to the kitchen, her hands twisting together nervously. He told me you agreed, she said quietly. He said you were on board but too busy to deal with the paperwork. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Yeah, that's not what happened. He went behind my back and now I'm holding proof someone forged my name. Did he tell you that part? Sarah's eyes widened, and she shook her head. No, he just said the money would help us, that it was the only way. Her voice broke, and I realized she was as blindsided as I was. We've been struggling, Jake. The medical bills, the mortgage. I thought you knew. I softened a little, seeing her distress, but it didn't change the facts. I didn't. And now the cabin's gone, and I don't even know if Ethan's telling me the whole truth. I paused, watching her carefully. Sarah, did he say anything about the lawyer or Horizon Properties? She hesitated, and that's when I knew she was holding something back. He mentioned the lawyer was a friend, someone who owed him a favor. That's all I know. Her voice was barely a whisper, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. A favor. That's what Ethan called it. I left the house with a sinking feeling that this wasn't just about money. Ethan was in deeper than he'd let on. I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was hiding more than just a bad decision. Sarah's hesitation, that flicker of fear in her eyes when I mentioned the lawyer, kept gnawing at me. I spent the next few days digging deeper, my apartment turning into a war room of coffee mugs, crumpled notes, and browser tabs. I wasn't sleeping much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cabin, the oak tree, Mom's ashes scattered in the wind. I kept thinking about what Ethan said. The lawyer handled it. Handled it how? And why was Horizon Properties so quick to close the deal? I finally got a call back from Richard Grayson, the lawyer. His voice was smooth, too polished, like he was used to talking his way out of trouble. Mr. Thompson, I understand your concerns, he said, but I assure you, the sale was above board. Your brother provided all necessary documentation. I pressed him about my signature, how it ended up on papers I'd never seen. He dodged, saying he'd look into it and get back to me. I didn't trust him. Something about his tone, the way he rushed me off the phone, screamed cover-up. I started searching for connections between Grayson and Horizon Properties. It didn't take long to find something. A quick dive into public records, and a few X-posts from local watchdog groups turned up a pattern. Grayson had handled multiple deals for Horizon, all involving small family properties sold under questionable circumstances. One post claimed he'd been investigated for fraud a few years back, but got off on a technicality. My blood ran cold. Ethan wasn't just desperate. He'd gotten tangled up with some shady people. I confronted him again, this time at his office. He works in insurance, a cubicle job with fluorescent lights and motivational posters that made me want to gag. I found him at his desk, typing away, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Jake, he said, startled, glancing around like he was worried someone would overhear. What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. About Grayson, about Horizon, and about why my signature's on those papers when I never signed them. His face went pale, and he stood up, pulling me into an empty conference room. Keep your voice down, he hissed, closing the door. You don't know what you're messing with. Then tell me, I shot back. Because right now, it looks like you sold our cabin to some sketchy developer through a crooked lawyer. Did you forge my signature, Ethan? Or did Grayson do it for you? He looked away, his hands clenched into fists. I didn't forge anything, he said, but his voice was shaky, unconvincing. Grayson said he could handle the paperwork. I trusted him. I needed the money, Jake. You don't know what it's like watching your family struggle, knowing you can't fix it. Stop hiding behind your family, I snapped. You could have asked me. We could have sold something else, taken out a loan, anything. But you chose to screw me over instead. I pulled out the sale documents, slapping them on the table. This isn't just about money. You got involved with people who don't play clean. What did Grayson promise you? A cut? A favor? Ethan's eyes darted to the papers, then back to me. For a second, I thought he might break, spill everything. But then his face hardened. That stubborn wall going up again. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. The sale's done. You got your half. Just drop it, Jake. Drop it? I stepped closer, my voice trembling with anger. You think I'm gonna let this go? You sold our history, Ethan. You let someone forge my name, and now you're acting like I'm the problem? I was shouting now, and I didn't care who heard. Tell me the truth, or I'm going to the police. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw something like fear in his eyes. You don't want to do that, he said quietly. You don't know what these people are capable of. What people? I pressed. Grayson? Horizon? What did you get us into? He didn't answer, just shook his head and opened the door, motioning for me to leave. Go home, Jake. Let it go. But as I walked out, I caught a glimpse of his computer screen, a spreadsheet with numbers that didn't look like insurance claims. It looked like payoffs. I couldn't let it go. Ethan's warning, you don't know what these people are capable of, kept rattling around in my head. but it only made me more determined. If he was scared, that meant there was something to find. I wasn't just fighting for the cabin anymore. I was fighting for the truth, for the brother I thought I knew, for the pieces of our family that were slipping away. By the time I got home from his office, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. That spreadsheet on his screen, those numbers, they weren't random. I knew Ethan was in over his head, and I wasn't about to let him drag me down with him. I spent the next 2 days playing detective, something I'm definitely not cut out for. I'm an IT guy, not a private investigator, but I was too stubborn to stop. I started with Grayson. His law firm's website was all polished headshots and buzzwords like trust and integrity, which made me want to puke. I dug into his background on X, where people don't hold back. A few posts from locals called him a fixer for Horizon properties, someone who made problems disappear, missing signatures, reluctant sellers, you name it. One user claimed their grandmother's house was sold out from under her, with Grayson's name on the paperwork. No proof, just rumors, but it was enough to keep me going. Then I found something solid. A public records search turned up a lien on Ethan's house, filed 6 months ago. It was from a medical debt collection agency, tens of thousands of dollars from when his daughter, Lily, was in the hospital. Ethan had mentioned the bills, but this was worse than I'd imagined. The lien was marked satisfied just a week before the cabin sale closed. That couldn't be a coincidence. I sat back in my chair, staring at my laptop, the pieces clicking together. Ethan hadn't just sold the cabin to pay bills. He'd done it to clear a debt. But why the secrecy? Why the forged signature? I called a friend from college, Mike, who's a paralegal and owes me a favor from when I fixed his laptop during finals. I sent him the sale documents and asked if he could look into Grayson's history. "This guy's bad news," Mike texted back a few hours later. "He's been flagged for ethics violations twice, but nothing stuck. Be careful, Jake." He also said the forged signature was enough to file a fraud claim, but I'd need more evidence to make it stick. That night, I drove to the cabin. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed to see it one last time before it was gone. The dirt road was still there, winding through the pines, but when I reached the property, my heart sank. The cabin was already half demolished, the porch caved in, the oak tree surrounded by construction barriers. I got out of my car and stood there, the cold biting at my knuckles, trying not to cry. This was where Mom laughed, where Dad told his terrible jokes, where Ethan and I were brothers, not strangers, and now it was rubble. I was about to leave when I saw headlights. A black SUV pulled up and a man in a suit stepped out. Grayson. I recognized him from his website photo. My pulse spiked. "Mr. Thompson?" he called, his voice too calm, like we were old friends. "I heard you've been asking questions. Thought we should talk." I froze, my hand gripping my keys like a weapon. "Talk about what?" I said, trying to sound tougher than I felt. "How you forged my signature? How you and Horizon screwed over my family?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your brother made a choice, Jake. He needed help, and I provided it. You got your share. Why make this harder than it needs to be?" He stepped closer, and I noticed a guy waiting by the SUV, arms crossed, watching us. "Some things are better left alone," Grayson said, "for everyone's sake." I wanted to punch him, to scream, but something in his tone stopped me. This wasn't just about the cabin anymore. Ethan was scared, Sarah was scared, and now I was standing in the dark with a man who sounded like he was threatening me. I got in my car, my hands shaking, and drove away, Grayson's headlights fading in my rearview mirror. I didn't know what Ethan had gotten us into, but I was about to find out. I drove home from the cabin with my heart in my throat, Grayson's words looping in my head. Some things are better left alone. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat, and I wasn't stupid enough to ignore it. But I also wasn't the type to back down. Not when Ethan had betrayed me, not when our family's last piece of history was being turned into condos, not when I could still smell Mom's perfume in the memories of that place. I needed answers, and I needed them from Ethan. No more dodging, no more half-truths. The next morning, I called in sick to work and went straight to Ethan's house. It was early, barely 7 a.m., but I didn't care. I banged on the door until Sarah answered, her face pale and her eyes red, like she'd been crying. "Jake, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't a good time." "I don't care," I said, pushing past her gently but firmly. "Where's Ethan?" I'm done with his excuses. The kids were in the living room, eating cereal and watching cartoons, oblivious to the tension. Ethan was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a coffee mug, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. When he saw me, he stood up, his shoulders slumping like he knew this was coming. "Jake, I told you to let it go," he said, his voice tired but edged with something sharper. Fear, maybe, or guilt. "Let it go?" I threw the sale documents on the table, the forged signature glaring up at us. Grayson showed up at the cabin last night, Ethan. He threatened me, said I should stop asking questions. What the hell did you do? My voice was shaking, and I could feel Sarah hovering behind me, her breath catching. Ethan's face crumpled, and for the first time he didn't try to deflect. He sank back into his chair, his hands covering his face. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he muttered. I was desperate, Jake. The medical bills, they were going to take the house. Grayson offered a way out. He said he could make the sale happen fast, no questions asked. I didn't know he'd forge your signature until it was done. You didn't know? I snapped, my anger boiling over. You let him do it, Ethan. You sold our cabin, our memories to save your own skin, and you didn't even tell me. I was shouting now, and I heard Sarah shush the kids in the next room, trying to keep them out of this. What else aren't you telling me? What's with the spreadsheet I saw? The payoffs? He froze, his eyes wide. You saw that? He whispered. Then he shook his head like he was trying to shake off the truth. It's not what you think. Grayson, he gave me a bonus for keeping quiet. He said Horizon needed the land for a big project, and they didn't have time for delays. I didn't ask questions. I just took the money. I stared at him. My brother. The guy who'd always been the responsible one, and I didn't recognize him anymore. You took a bribe, I said, my voice flat. You let them forge my name, destroy our family's legacy, for a payout. Who are you, Ethan? I did it for my kids, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You don't get it, Jake. You don't know what it's like to watch your daughter in a hospital bed, to see your wife cry because you might lose everything. I made a choice to screw me over, I said, my voice breaking. You could have asked me. We could have figured it out together. But you chose to lie, to cheat, to let some sleazy lawyer and his goons threaten me. I stepped closer, my hands clenched. I'm going to the police, Ethan. I'm reporting the fraud. And I'm telling them about Grayson and Horizon. Sarah gasped behind me. Jake, no, she said, grabbing my arm. You don't understand. Grayson, he's connected. Ethan got a call last night, after you left the cabin. They know you're digging. They said if we don't stay quiet, they'll come after us. All of us. I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to deny it, to tell me it wasn't that serious. But he just nodded, his eyes hollow. I'm sorry, Jake, he said. I didn't know it would come to this. I stood there, torn between rage and fear, between wanting to protect my brother and wanting to make him pay. The cabin was gone. Our trust was shattered. And now we were both in the crosshairs of people who didn't play fair. I thought about Mom and Dad, how they'd raised us to stick together, and I wondered if I was wrong to keep pushing, to risk Ethan's family, to risk everything. But I couldn't let this go. Not the betrayal, not the truth. So here I am, sitting in my apartment, the fraud report half written on my laptop. I keep asking myself, am I the asshole for wanting justice, even if it means putting Ethan's family in danger? Or is he the one who broke everything, leaving me no choice but to fight back? It's been 3 months since I sat in my apartment, staring at that half-written fraud report, my finger hovering over the send button. I didn't send it that night. I couldn't. Not because I was scared, though I was, more than I'd like to admit, but because Sarah's words kept echoing in my head. They'll come after us. All of us. I kept picturing Ethan's kids, Lily and Max, oblivious to the mess their dad had dragged us into. I hated him for what he'd done, but I couldn't bring myself to risk them. Not yet. So I made a different choice, one I'm still not sure was right. I started this whole thing thinking I was fighting for the cabin, for Mom and Dad's memory, for justice. But the more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about Ethan's betrayal. It was about what I was willing to do to fix it, and what I could live with. I closed my laptop that night and decided to play it smart. If Grayson and Horizon were as dangerous as Ethan and Sarah seemed to think, I needed more than a forged signature to take them down. I needed proof, and I needed to keep my family safe while I got it. I reached out to Mike, my paralegal friend again. He wasn't thrilled about getting pulled deeper into this, but he agreed to help. You're poking a hornet's nest, Jake, he warned over beers at a dive bar. Grayson's got connections. Cops, local politicians, maybe worse. You need something airtight. He hooked me up with a contact, a private investigator named Carla, who specialized in corporate fraud. She wasn't cheap, but I used part of the cabin sale money, ironic I know, to hire her. She started tailing Grayson and digging into Horizon's deals, looking for anything that could tie them to the forged signature or Ethan's bonus. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from Ethan. I couldn't look at him without feeling that same mix of rage and heartbreak. So I stopped calling, stopped showing up at his house. Sarah texted me a few times, begging me to let it go, saying Ethan was a wreck, barely sleeping, jumping at every phone call. He knows he messed up, Jake, she wrote. He's trying to make it right. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He'd sold our past and gotten us tangled with people who thought threats were just another Tuesday. I wasn't ready to forgive that. Carla came through after a month. She called me late one night, her voice low and urgent. "I've got something," she said. "Grayson's been sloppy. He's got a paper trail, emails, bank transfers, even a recorded call where he brags about handling reluctant sellers. Your brother's not the only one he's done this to." She sent me a file with enough evidence to bury Grayson. Proof he'd forged signatures on at least 3 other property deals, bank records showing payoffs to Ethan and others, and a shady connection to a local council member who fast-tracked Horizon's permits. It was a gold mine, but it also confirmed my worst fears. Ethan wasn't just desperate, he'd taken a bribe knowing it was dirty. I met Ethan at a park the next day, away from his house, away from Grayson's reach. He looked like a ghost, his eyes sunken, his hands fidgeting with a coffee cup. "Jake," he started, but I cut him off, sliding a copy of Carla's file across the picnic table. "This is what you got us into," I said, my voice cold. "Grayson's going down, Ethan, and you're in this up to your neck." I watched his face as he flipped through the pages, emails, bank statements, all of it. He didn't say a word, just kept staring, like he was seeing his life unravel. "I didn't know it was this bad," he finally whispered. I thought I was just saving my family." "You thought wrong," I said, but my anger was fading, replaced by something heavier, grief maybe. "I'm turning this over to the police, Ethan, but I'm giving you a chance to come clean first. Talk to them, tell them everything. Maybe they'll go easier on you." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and for a second, I saw the brother who'd carried me home when I was 10, who'd promised we'd always have each other's backs. "I'm sorry, Jake," he said. "I'll do it. I'll talk." I turned the evidence over to the police the next day, along with a statement from Ethan. Grayson was arrested within a week, and Horizon's projects are under investigation. Ethan's still waiting to see if he'll face charges. His lawyer thinks he might get a deal for cooperating. The cabin's gone, bulldozed into nothing, but I visit the oak tree sometimes, just to feel close to Mom and Dad. I don't know if I did the right thing, protecting Ethan while chasing justice. I don't know if we'll ever be brothers again, not the way we were, but I know I couldn't let the truth stay buried, no matter how much it hurt.